Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, an investigation into French thermal spas who claim to treat infertility in women, this despite no medical proof that the procedure called vaginal irrigation is indeed effective. Also, the dark side of microfinancing and how millions of Indian women are now facing spiralling debt from a system which was meant to lift them out of poverty.
Je dis non, c'est non. Mais quand je dis oui, c'est oui.
And they call it digital voodoo. A Togolese music trio has wowed Europe with a unique beat that combines voodoo incantations and electro rhythms. But first, and for decades, people here in France have gone to thermal spas to be treated for a variety of ailments, and the treatments are partially covered by the national healthcare system. Some of the spas claim to treat infertility in women, even though there's no scientific proof that such treatments actually work. Here's an investigation from our colleagues at France 2.
For almost 70 years, treatments at thermal spas have been covered by the French health system, as long as a patient has a prescription from a doctor. In France, there are 84 thermal spa clinics, which see some 600,000 patients per year. Some say they leave the spas in better shape.
I have less pain.
This stay gave me real benefits.
Thermal cures cost the national health insurance about 265 million euros each year. Doctors send patients with joint pain, respiratory problems, or for gynecological reasons. But in the list of pathologies, one caught our eye. Several spas say they treat infertility, one claiming to have an effective and natural treatment for infertility, another taking it a step further, saying babies were born because of our cures. Such is the case at this thermal spa in southwest France, known for its infertility treatments. Each year, the center treats about 100 women, many with one last hope of having a child.
I'm trying. I have nothing to lose. This is one of my last chances to give birth.
For 3 weeks, this 43-year-old patient receives several different daily treatments, notably vaginal irrigation.
The goal is to irrigate the vagina with about 2 liters of liquid during a bath for around 20 minutes, so that the interior of the uterus is cleansed without inundating it.
The treatment costs about 500 euros, reimbursed almost entirely for women being treated medically for infertility. On this wall, the center proudly displays birth announcements of its former patients, testimonials which, according to management, proves the treatments have been successful. But that is not always the case at other thermal spas. Here we enter another center with a hidden camera and introduce ourselves as a couple dealing with infertility.
Hello, nice to meet you.
A doctor explains to us how the treatment works.
It's a vaginal thermal water compress of thermal water that you must leave inside the vagina for at least 1 hour.
After a few minutes, we pressed the doctor about how effective the treatments are, and his response was surprising.
We don't know. We don't know how it works. We know that it does something, but we don't know. It's like when you go to Lourdes and you get cured of something. We just don't know.
Is the treatment supposed to purify?
As I just told you, we don't know.
We contacted the National Association of Thermal Spas, which said that no studies have been done on the efficacy of such treatments. One of its representatives confirmed this to us on the phone.
At this time, there are none. Nothing convincing. I wouldn't risk telling you that thermal cures cure infertility. It's not true. If it was, you can imagine that I'd love to say so, but it doesn't work like that.
We showed the video we shot at the thermal spa to the president of the National School of Gynecology. It's fair to say she was stunned.
I don't see how vaginal irrigation can have any effect on ovulation. This really escapes me. Seriously, it's impossible.
She says the treatments are not only ineffective, but also inadvisable.
It is not at all recommended in gynecological medicine to have vaginal irrigation. I think it might even have a harmful effect.
So how is it that these so-called cures are reimbursed by the French health system? Here's how it usually works. For a treatment to be covered, it must be evaluated by the French National Health Authority. The regulator evaluates if the treatment is effective, which determines if it's reimbursed. But for thermal treatments, there's an exception. They've never been reviewed by national health authorities for their effectiveness, and yet they're still reimbursed. In recent years, several lawmakers have tried unsuccessfully to change this anomaly.
To make the effectiveness a condition for reimbursement.
Yves Boer is a retired deputy who tried to do the same in 2008. He says there's an economic lobby led by elected officials from towns with thermal spas, which prevents any reform, because local economies benefit to the tune of up to 5 billion euros each year.
They're defending an economic model. The economies of these towns depend on hydrotherapy. The hotels, restaurants, etc. It's social security which helps finance this economic model.
In the face of this criticism, defenders of hydrotherapy claim that reimbursements for thermal treatments represent only 0.15% of overall health insurance expenses.
Now, when it was invented, microfinance was supposed to be a revolution, the idea being to lend small amounts of money to the very poor, especially women, to lift them out of poverty. But almost 50 years after its introduction to India, for some it's becoming a living nightmare, with an estimated 60 million women now facing significant debt. This report from our team on the ground.
In the state of Maharashtra, central India, lies the village of Natala. This is where Sindhu, a farm worker, lives. During the planting season, she works in the field for a wage of just €2 a day. For the rest of the year, she earns no income at all. There's only one way for these daily wage laborers to survive these months of forced unemployment, and that is by taking loans.
In this season, we don't get work. What are we supposed to do? We have to pay for food, medical expenses. How can we cover that if there's no work? I take the loans they give me. I have stomachs to fill.
These microfinance companies have provided women with such loans for the past 10 years. These loans are exclusively limited to females. This is a blessing for Sindhu, as she would have never been able to secure a loan from a conventional bank. The aim of such credit is to enable women to invest and lift themselves out of poverty. But for the past 10 years, Sindhu has used these loans to pay for her daily expenses. And now there's no way out of this debt spiral.
I've taken new loans to repay the previous ones. I've fallen into this trap, but I'm trying to tell the women of the village to not do the same. I tell them, don't take the loans, or you'll go through this hell like me.
Like Sindhu, in Natala, almost all the women are in debt. Most have taken various loans from different banks. As a result, almost every day a new creditor comes to the village to collect payments. Every time, some woman goes missing.
By what time will you send the money?
I will call you when I have the money.
I told you to send it last week, and I told you to come to the meeting.
Threats, ultimatums, every week the same scene repeats itself.
I'm worried. I feel like the creditor will come to my place in the evening with 4 or 5 people to get their money back. But I don't have the money. How can I give it back?
But creditors don't want to hear about these difficulties. They present microfinance as a godsend for these women.
Only small microfinance banks like us are willing to give loans to people who are poor with modest means.
In 2022, more than 9% of Indian women had access to microcredit. Due to climate change, droughts and floods are becoming more frequent. This deepens the debt trap for women in rural areas.
And finally, they call it digital voodoo. The Togolese music trio, the Benz Girls of Togo, have pioneered a unique style that combines both voodoo incantations and electro rhythms. The group also using their platform to champion women's rights and environmental concerns.
Catchy rhythms and powerful vocals. The Benz Girls of Togo are hard at work in rehearsals in the Symphony Hall of the Paris Philharmonic. 5 years ago. Singer Peter Solo from the group Voodoo Game gave them their big break. The three singers met during a musical workshop in Togo, and he immediately saw their potential. He blended the three women's vocal power, added a soupçon of synth, and digital voodoo was born.
We take inspiration from the voodoo convents. We were inspired by their singing style, which uses two ranges, don and mami. It's still the do, re, mi, fa, so scale, but there are some notes like fa that are not part of the voodoo scale.
There were no instruments to recreate the sounds of voodoo rituals, so the women built them themselves with recycled materials. They made DIY drums and a bass of PVC pipes, struck with a flip-flop. The group is shaped by that sense of resourcefulness, as well as a strong feminist identity.
African societies are patriarchal. Women are often relegated to the background. There is still a lot to be done so that we can regain the ground our mothers lost.
Quand je dis non, c'est non. Mais quand je dis oui, c'est oui. Tu dois me laisser tranquille. Si je n'ai pas envie de toi, garde-nous n'amour olé.
The name Nana Benz du Togo is a reference to the businesswomen of the 1970s who made their fortune in the wax trade and drove expensive German cars. These modern-day nanas hark back to those past symbols of female success while forging ahead on their own musical path.
And that's all for this edition. We'd love to hear your suggestions for the 51%, so do get in touch via Facebook, Instagram and X, of course, formerly known as Twitter. And you can catch our previous episodes on our website. So until our next show, bye for now.